What happens when a CEO goes undercover to serve food and finds out his own staff are going hungry? Vince Zeller stood at the back of the catering van, adjusting the black polo shirt and cap that hid his usual tailored suit and silver hair. At 52, he still moved like a man 10 years younger, but even now he felt out of place. Not because of the manual labor, he didn't mind that. It was the fact that he hadn't set foot in one of his own catering kitchens in over a year. 12 locations across the state. He'd inherited the business from his father, who built it with grit and sweat, one buffet table at a time. Vince had grown it, made it sleek, modern, profitable. But lately something felt off. A few anonymous reviews had mentioned cold attitudes, poor treatment of staff, and one even said, "I saw a server eat from the trash." That one stuck. He didn't want to believe it, but he couldn't ignore it either. So here he was, disguised as Cal, a new trainee hired through a temp agency. The company occasionally used temps for big events, and since he'd never personally met the staff at the downtown location, it worked. A fake resume, a burner phone, and a shaved beard had sealed it. The manager of the downtown branch, Mike, barely glanced at him when he arrived. "You're the new guy? Great. We're slammed today. Don't get in the way." Vince nodded. "Got it." The event was a corporate lunch for a software firm. Over 200 people. The team loaded trays, rolled carts, and set up chafing dishes like a well-oiled machine. Vince was paired with a young woman, maybe 27, named Malia Rivera. A soft voice but sharp eyes. "New, huh?" she asked, offering him a pair of gloves. "Don't burn yourself on the chafer lids. They'll bite." He smiled. "Thanks." As they moved through the setup, Vince observed everything. Malia was quick, polite, and seemed to take on more than her share. When a tray of chicken skewers nearly tipped, she caught it one-handed and kept smiling. She was running the floor, even though Mike, the manager, was nowhere to be seen. "Where's Mike?" Vince asked during a lull. Malia glanced around. "He usually pops in at the end to check on presentation. Which means he takes credit if the client's happy." Vince raised a brow. "That normal?" She hesitated. "Yeah. It's fine." He didn't push. "Not yet." Around noon, the guests started arriving. Vince worked the line with Malia, serving garlic mashed potatoes and roasted veggies. People were friendly, appreciative, and the food looked good. But about halfway through, Vince noticed something odd. Staff weren't eating. The event had more than enough food. Trays were full, extras stacked in the hot boxes. But none of the servers, kitchen staff, even the driver was grabbing a meal. Malia was still going strong, but her face had gone pale. "Hey," Vince said quietly. "Grab a plate. I'll cover." She shook her head. "We're not allowed to eat until we're off the clock. Even then, only if Mike says it's okay." Vince frowned. "That can't be right." She gave him a tired look. "It's his rule. He says it's wasteful to feed staff from client food, even leftovers." "But this is excess," Vince said. "It's just gonna get tossed." Malia shrugged. "He'd rather throw it out than let us eat." "Happened last week. I asked if the dishwasher could have a plate he hadn't eaten all day. Mike said no. Said he didn't earn it." Vince felt something hard twist in his stomach. "That's insane." "Yeah, well," she muttered. "You want the job, you shut up and keep scooping." Later, Vince saw it for himself. After the guests had cleared out and the staff began packing up, a teenage runner named Eli tried to quietly make a plate from the leftovers. Mike appeared out of nowhere. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Eli froze, holding the tongs midair. I haven't eaten today, sir." "I was just gonna put it back," Mike snapped. "You're not a guest." Vince bit his tongue but stepped closer, watching. "But there's like 3 trays left," Eli started. "I said put it back. You don't eat from client food. I don't care how much is left. If you want lunch, bring one." Eli dropped the tongs, face red with shame. Vince's jaw clenched. Mike turned to the crew. "And just so we're clear, if I catch anyone else eating from the setup, you're gone. That includes you, new guy." Vince nodded slowly. Understood. But inside, he was burning. Later that evening, as they loaded the van, Malia leaned closer. "You okay? You looked angry back there." Vince looked at her, really looked. Her apron was stained, her eyes tired but kind. "I'm fine," he said. "Just didn't expect today to go like this." She laughed, soft and bitter. "Yeah. Welcome to catering." He gave her a small smile. You always this good at your job? She blinked. I try. You're more than good. She looked away, unsure how to respond. Vince didn't say more. Not yet. But his mind was already turning. Tomorrow he'd be back. And this time he'd dig deeper. Because if this was how Mike ran things when no one was watching, he needed to see it all. The next morning, Vince arrived earlier than required, parking a block away and walking the rest of the distance to the downtown kitchen. The sun hadn't fully risen yet and the air still held the cool edge of dawn. He carried a plain thermos and a small notebook tucked in his back pocket, not for writing, but to keep up the new guy pretense. He needed to blend in, not observe like a tourist. Inside, the prep area buzzed low with activity. Fluorescent lights hummed above grimy tiles, and the smell of onions sautéing in butter cut through the morning haze. 2 line cooks were at the stove, chopping and stirring in silence. The younger one, a heavy-set man with a limp, moved slower than the other. Neither looked up when Vince entered. From the corner, Malia raised her head from a tray of bread rolls she was portioning. Her eyes met his for half a second before dropping back to her task. You're early, she said without looking up. Wanted to get ahead, Vince replied. No one ever wants to get ahead here. Either you're new or you're lost. A third man entered from the back door, teeth chattering slightly under a thin windbreaker. He looked about 40, with sleeves too short for his long arms and duct tape wrapped around the toe of one boot. Morning, Felipe, Malia called without stopping. The man nodded and moved to the sink, beginning to wash produce in silence. Vince noticed how he glanced over his shoulder now and then, as if expecting someone to call him out for being too slow. Vince walked over to the prep table and began slicing cucumbers, careful to match the rhythm of the others. He kept his ears open. Conversations were few, and when they did happen, they were hushed. There was a heaviness in the air that went deeper than exhaustion. Nobody was joking. Nobody was humming. It was as if speaking above a whisper would trigger something they'd rather not deal with. At 7:45, Mike arrived. No greeting. No acknowledgement. Just walked through the kitchen, tossed his messenger bag on the back desk, and started checking the order sheets. He shouted across the room. Who prepped the balsamic chicken last night? The older line cook raised a hand. I did. Mike walked over, pulled a piece of chicken from the tray, sniffed it, then threw it into the trash. Tossed the whole thing. Smells off. Redo it within 30 minutes. The cook didn't argue. Just nodded and began pulling ingredients. Vince caught the time on the wall clock and did the math. Re-prepping that dish in 30 minutes was pushing it. He stepped closer to Malia. Is that normal? This is Mike's version of quality control, she said flatly. He doesn't taste anything. Just decides it's bad if someone he doesn't like made it. Does that happen often? Only to people who can't talk back. Felipe passed behind them, carrying a heavy bucket of peeled potatoes, favoring his right leg. Vince noticed no one offered help. Not because they didn't care, but because they were all stretched thin. Everyone was already doing more than one job. The crew loaded up 2 vans by 9. Both were headed to different venues, one for a wedding brunch, the other for a university donor luncheon. Vince was assigned to the latter, along with Malia, Felipe, and a new driver he hadn't met before named Curtis. The man was quiet, clean-cut, and drove like he was afraid of hitting a bump too hard. Malia handled the route directions. On the way, Vince sat in the back of the van beside Felipe. The older man took slow breaths, rubbing his knee. Vince leaned a little closer. The limp old injury? Delivery accident. Years ago. Slipped in the rain. No insurance. No workers' comp? Felipe shook his head. Didn't report it right away? Mike said it was my fault for not wearing better shoes. Vince clenched his hands in his lap. You still work with that? Always, Felipe nodded. I got kids. When they arrived at the university venue, the team moved fast. Malia directed table setup while Vince and Felipe arranged the buffet station. Curtis helped run trays in, but stayed on his phone between trips, barely speaking. As they laid out the final rows of salad and fruit displays, a woman in a tailored pantsuit approached. She introduced herself as the university's events coordinator. Her tone was clipped but professional. You're the lead? She asked Malia. For setup, yes. I asked for fresh florals. These are silk. Malia blinked. We weren't told to bring florals. That would have come from the client's side. The woman frowned. I sent the request last week. I'll have to call Mike. She stepped aside and pulled out her phone. Malia turned back to the table, her face carefully neutral. She's right, Vince said under his breath. There's no flowers in the truck. No one told us, Malia replied. Mike doesn't share client updates after the first draft. Says it confuses the staff to give them too much info. Doesn't that screw up everything? Only if the client notices. An hour later, guests began arriving, alumni in suits, donors in pearls, the kind of crowd that paid for exclusivity and expected perfection. Vince worked beside Malia again, this time plating hors d'oeuvres directly onto trays for servers weaving through the reception area. The pace was relentless. Curtis leaned against a wall, scrolling on his phone again. Malia glanced at him, then looked away. He always do that? Vince asked. Every time. He's Mike's cousin. That explained it. Vince didn't reply. He didn't need to. The pieces were falling into place. A kitchen ruled by fear and favoritism. A manager who ignored injuries, withheld information, and punished people for things out of their control. After the reception, they packed up leftovers. Vince saw Felipe glance longingly at a tray of untouched sandwiches. His stomach growled audibly. Malia noticed too, and quietly handed him a wrapped roll without a word. Felipe hesitated, then tucked it into his jacket pocket. Curtis saw it and laughed. Better hide that or Mike'll fire you for stealing. Felipe stiffened. Curtis looked at Vince. New guy doesn't know yet. Mike gets real pissy if people touch the leftovers. Says it's about liability, but really, he just doesn't like seeing freeloaders. Vince said nothing. He wanted to see what Curtis would say next. You know what he did last Christmas? Curtis continued. Told the crew they were getting bonuses. Then handed out $50 grocery store coupons and said, don't spend it all on beer. Half the team didn't even get one. Malia was folding a tablecloth nearby. Curtis, she said without looking up, maybe don't tell that story in front of new hires. Curtis shrugged. What? It's the truth. Back at the kitchen, Mike was waiting. He didn't greet anyone, just looked at the trays, counted the extra portions, and told them to dump everything. Curtis walked past him with a nod, unbothered. Before Vince could slip away, Mike called out, Hey, Cal, you're back tomorrow. Yes. Good. We've got a big city council thing. Be here by 6. Malia passed by as Mike turned away. You're in deep now, she said softly. Vince glanced around the kitchen. The crew was gathering their things in silence, heading out one by one. Felipe limped toward the back exit. The older cook from earlier was washing a single pan without being asked. Even Malia looked worn down, her posture a little slumped. He'd seen enough. The next day would be different. He wasn't coming back as Cal. Vince arrived at the downtown kitchen before sunrise. This time, not as Cal. He wore a button-down shirt beneath a black jacket, his hair combed back and beard clean-trimmed. No hat, no gloves, no fake name. He stepped through the back entrance without announcing himself, walking past a prep table where Malia and the older line cook were slicing fruit. Neither noticed him at first, too focused on the task in front of them. The air smelled like boiling vinegar and scorched toast. Mike's voice rang out from the office down the hall. Someone get the damn delivery invoice off the printer. Vince walked past the break room and into the front prep area. Curtis was leaning against the coffee machine, scrolling through his phone with one hand and holding a half-eaten croissant in the other. He glanced up, paused mid-bite, then stood up straighter. Morning. Vince didn't answer. He kept walking. Inside the office, Mike sat behind a cluttered desk, legs crossed, coffee balanced dangerously close to a stack of catering orders. He looked up, confused. Can I help? Why? You can stand up, Vince said, voice low and even. Mike blinked. Sorry, do I know? I'm Vince Zeller. I own this company. The silence hit like a dropped tray. Mike's mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. You've been working under the assumption that no one's watching, Vince continued. You've been wrong. Mike stood quickly and tried to recover. Look, if this is about the client complaints, I can explain. You'll have a chance, Vince said. But not now. I want everyone in the main kitchen. All staff. Right now. Mike hesitated. Now. Within 5 minutes, the full morning crew had gathered. Malia stood behind a prep cart, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Felipe leaned against the wall near the dish station, his weight shifted to avoid pressure on his injured leg. Curtis hovered near the back, eyes darting. Vince stepped forward. I spent the last 2 days working alongside you. You knew me as Cal. I saw everything firsthand, how you work, how you're treated, and how this branch is being run. No one moved. I started this company with my father. We built it on respect. Not just for clients, but for the people doing the real work. Somewhere along the way that got lost. I let people like Mike take too much control because numbers looked good on paper. That's on me. Mike cleared his throat. Vince, with all due respect, the staff here. Stop talking, Vince said flatly. Mike took a step back. I watched a kitchen where people are afraid to speak up, where someone limps through a shift and no one says a word because asking for help gets you punished, where leftovers are thrown away while staff go hungry, where clients are misled, details ignored, and blame is passed down the chain until the lowest paid person gets hit hardest. Curtis tried to interject, but Vince didn't give him the chance. You step forward. Curtis looked around, unsure if he should pretend not to hear. Now. Curtis stepped forward reluctantly. You used your cousin's title to coast through shifts. You stood around while others carried your weight, joked about people getting fired for eating after 10-hour shifts, and shared misinformation about company policy. You're done here. Hand in your badge and leave. Curtis opened his mouth. There's nothing to discuss. You treated this job like a favor owed to you. You've lost that favor. Curtis didn't speak again. He walked to the locker room and disappeared. Vince turned to Mike. You've been running this branch like a fiefdom. You withhold information from your team, disregard safety, ignore injuries, and punish initiative. You failed to lead. You failed to serve. You're finished. Mike's face flushed. You're making a mistake. I've been running this location profitably for 3 years. At what cost? Mike said nothing. Felipe, Vince continued, turning away from him, you're staying home for the next 2 weeks. Paid. You'll receive full coverage for physical therapy and we'll schedule an on-site safety inspection this week. You shouldn't have had to work through pain to keep your job. Felipe blinked, unsure how to respond. Vince turned to the older line cook. You're being promoted to interim kitchen lead. You've kept this place running when others didn't even notice. Starting today, you're reporting directly to HQ until we appoint a new branch manager. The man looked stunned. Thank you. I'll do my best. I know you will. Vince stepped forward, closer to the center of the group. This isn't about fixing things with a few quick changes. This is about rebuilding trust. We're bringing in an HR audit team this week. You'll have private sessions to share what's been going on here, everything. No retaliation. No exceptions. He locked eyes with Malia. I owe you an apology. You've been carrying this team without recognition. You've stepped into leadership when no one asked you to, and you did it while being ignored, overworked, and disrespected. That ends today. Malia didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, what happens now? You're being reassigned temporarily to HQ. We're developing a new training program for team leads, and I want you helping write it. You'll be paid at a manager rate starting today. If you decide you want to stay on that path, the next open manager position is yours. She frowned. I didn't ask for a promotion. You earned it anyway. She looked down, then nodded once. You all deserve better, Vince continued. You'll get better, starting now. The room stayed quiet, but something shifted. Tension, long settled into the bones of the place, began to ease. I'll be here all week, Vince said. Not as a guest. As a worker. I'm not going back to my office until I know this place is on the right track. He turned to leave, then paused. We've got trays of breakfast sandwiches in the van. Warm. Meant for the setup crew. Take a break. Eat. No one moved at first. Then Felipe stepped forward slowly and reached for his coat. The others followed. Vince didn't stay to watch them eat. He walked back into the hallway past the office where Mike's coffee still sat untouched. He picked it up and poured it into the sink. By the time he returned to the prep area, the sound of quiet laughter had returned. Not loud, not forced, but real. The kind that only comes when people finally start to believe they're being seen. By the following Monday, the downtown kitchen looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The fluorescent lights still buzzed faintly. The walls still needed a fresh coat of paint. But the tension that had once sat in every corner, clinging to the backs of workers like a second skin, had started to lift. Vince returned without fanfare. No entourage, no clipboard, no cameras. Just a rolled-up sleeve, a fresh apron, and the same thermos he'd first brought in as Cal. He didn't make speeches anymore. He didn't need to. The interim kitchen lead, a soft-spoken man named Darius, was already at the prep table reviewing the lunch order for a local nonprofit's donor event. He nodded when Vince joined him. We're short a runner, Darius said. Eli had class. I'll cover half the drop-offs, but we'll need someone to float. I'll handle it, Vince replied. Just let me know when the van's ready. He turned to find Malia reviewing a new checklist mounted beside the dry storage door. Her hair was tied back tighter than usual and her shirt bore a new company patch reading Team Lead Candidate. She didn't look up when he walked over. You added the allergen flags to the prep sheets, Vince said. They're color-coded now. Red for nuts, blue for dairy, green for gluten. We're labeling every tray and station. He nodded. Smart. I also updated the client communication logs. No more surprises on site. If a client makes a last-minute change, it's logged and initialed. Good. Malia finally looked at him. Do you mean that? I do. She seemed to accept it. Then she handed him a clipboard. Need you to sign off on the revised delivery schedule. I moved Curtis's replacement to the afternoon shift. I didn't want to overload the morning crew. Who'd you assign? Felipe's son, Mateo. He's in culinary school. Only part-time for now, but he's fast. Polite too. Vince scanned the schedule. And you cleared this with Darius? He suggested it. He signed the bottom of the page. The rest of the morning moved fast. Trays were packed, vans were loaded, and Vince ran point on a midday delivery to the nonprofit event. The site was a converted warehouse with exposed beams and folding chairs, nothing fancy, but the energy was hopeful. As he helped unload the hot boxes, a woman in a floral scarf approached. You're with Zeller Catering? Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to say your team's been excellent. Respectful, quick, and the food smelled amazing even before it got inside. Thank you. We're proud of them. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of Felipe's son stepping out of the van, adjusting his grip on a stack of trays. He moved with the same quiet determination as his father. Vince gave him a nod. Mateo returned it with a shy smile, then got back to work. Back at the kitchen, the rhythm held. Workers moved efficiently, but without the brittle urgency that had once defined their days. People spoke in full sentences. They asked for help when they needed it. No one kept their head down like they were waiting to be reprimanded. In the break room, a new sign had been posted on the fridge. Staff meals. 1 per shift. No permission needed. Take care of each other. It was taped beside another sheet, an anonymous feedback form for employees. A small stack of filled-out pages already sat below it. Vince read none of them. That was HR's job now. But seeing them there meant people believed their voices mattered. He was heading back through the hallway when he noticed Malia standing at the side exit, her phone in her hand, not texting, just holding it. She seemed on edge. You all right? He asked. I got a message from Mike, she said. Vince stopped. What did he say? That he heard I'd been rewarded for tattling. Said I should enjoy it while it lasts. Vince's jaw tightened. Did you forward it to HR? I did. They said they'd escalate it. Good. That kind of behavior doesn't come back through the door. Not here. Not ever. She nodded slowly. I'm just not used to actually being believed. You don't have to get used to it overnight, he said. But you should expect it. Later that afternoon, while trays were being cleaned and logs updated, Vince met with Darius in the office. They sat across from each other, the desk between them cleared of clutter. Vince had brought in a folder. I've been reviewing the financials for this branch, he said. Turns out, despite everything, it's one of the highest performing in net margin. You managed that with half the support and none of the recognition. Darius shrugged. People here work hard. I just kept things moving. You kept things alive. I want to offer you the full-time manager position. Darius blinked. I thought that was going to Malia. We talked, Vince said. She's not ready to manage a location. Not yet. But she wants to build something. She's joining our internal development committee. You'll have full authority here, and she'll help shape what this company looks like going forward. Darius nodded, then extended his hand. Vince shook it. That evening, Vince stayed late. Not because he needed to, but because he wanted to see how it all settled when the last van pulled out and the lights dimmed. He helped stack chairs, wiped down steel counters, and stood beside Felipe as they hosed out the bins. You didn't have to stay, Felipe said. I did, Vince replied. They worked in silence a moment longer. I've been here 12 years, Felipe said finally. This is the first week I haven't gone home angry. Vince didn't answer. He just kept rinsing the bin. On his way out, he passed by the dry storage door. Malia had left a note on the new checklist board. Don't forget, tomorrow's setup has a peanut allergy. Red tags on all trays. Underneath it, someone had scribbled. Got it. Thanks, M. Another voice. Another connection. It was working. Before he left, he walked through the kitchen one last time. The lights were low, the equipment clean. The air no longer smelled like burnt toast or vinegar. It smelled like lemon cleaner and something warmer like fresh bread cooling after a long day. Vince paused at the doorway. The company wasn't fixed. Not completely. There were still policies to rewrite, people to train, habits to unlearn. But he'd seen the rot. He'd ripped it out. And now something better was starting to grow. No more blind spots. No more distance. He turned off the light and closed the door behind him.